two, 1, 2.
We're good?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Hello.
Hey, awesome. You can hear me too. That's great. Yes,
I
that's
can. Let
awesome.
me just check. Let me just check. I've got one.
Yeah, I can
Hang
hear
on. I
you
want to
now.
make. Oh, that's a little delayed. Okay. And then for the so speaker, we've got that. And then for microphone, we want.
Okay, now I can't hear you. Okay, so we'll just wait a
How
second.
about now?
Now I can hear you. Yeah,
Okay. Does that sound okay?
that sounds fine. Yeah.
It does. Okay. Give me 2 secs. I just need to
Okay.
do.
And I'm gonna do something that I need to
Give me
do.
1 more minute, man. I just need to set up my Bluetooth here. So I'm.
Oh, good.
Uh,
And let's see where we're at.
how's it going?
Not bad, I have been just keeping busy, getting ready for what we're doing in LA, getting ready for I think it's going to be a soft launch that we're doing of our new app, Tutti, and
Yeah.
just other than that, doing my usual Sync Summit stuff. So I'm keeping busy. I'm pretty good, and I got basically I put it out as an article, but it's more like a white
Mm,
paper on the Korean market, which I've been sort of slowly developing for the last few months to talk about it from
right.
a business point of view, because I haven't seen anybody do it in a sort of a white paper style breakdown of why is it that the Korean market, the Korean music business has been successful. So I put that out there. And part of the reason for me of doing that is that I do a lot of work with Korea. So I wanted to help people to understand what's going on there. And
Excellent.
yeah, it was good. But now I'm back to my usual beats, talking about music and audiovisual media and AI.
I
So
see. And
yes,
and yes, so we'll get into it. I'm just gonna raise this microphone. Is
okay.
the visual okay as well?
The visual is perfectly fine.
Perfectly fine. So my face for radio is working for us, is what we're saying.
Exactly. Both of our faces for radio, coming in loud and clear.
I do
Uh,
love that expression. That's a great one.
so do I. It's a pretty funny one.
All
Uh,
right. And I'm just going to
okay.
check the audio, the my mic level one more time. I've raised it up a little bit. Is the input good? It's looking good from here.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're good.
Okay. Good luck.
Okay,
We're
so
all counting on you, is what I want to say now.
exactly. I think we're going to be in great shape, and I am going to put us live in about a minute and a half. Just let me get these two posts up that I want to put into our groups to get people to come to the Zoom and to give them a stream from YouTube. It'll just take me now about
Cool.
another minute max. Okay.
And you're recording, yeah? And
Yep.
it's recorded as well. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm
Awesome.
not recording yet, but it will be. Yep.
Excellent.
Uh,
Will the link be in the chat?
yep. Mm, yeah, this will just take a minute. Uh,
I just realized I'm sorry about last. I didn't realize it was a live one. That was my mistake. So
no worries.
apologies.
It's no worries. I should have been specific about it. But it was fine because I was able to bring Marcus in from Sinite. And the thing with Marcus was that he actually was launching their 2.0
Oh,
at
cool.
Sinite the next day. So it ended up being totally fortuitous. So at the end of the day, we were able to have a pretty good conversation and get into some things about what they're doing, show a demo, etc. So it wasn't a loss by any means. And now we are almost ready.
Oh,
And
cool. Well, I think we're live on YouTube, by the way.
yeah, I know. So we're we're speaking a little bit on YouTube. So everybody on YouTube, hello.
Hi,
Uh,
YouTube.
yes. Let's see here. I'm gonna just pin this to featured, and then we're gonna do this, and everybody gets to see a little bit behind the curtain here. But there we go. Okay, and that is a beautiful picture of me as always. Let's see. Okay, one more thing, Benji, and then we'll be on. It's unfortunate I can't preload these things
It's
the
all
way
right.
I'd like to, uh, but here we go. Okay, so now let's get started, and we'll have more people coming in. The stream is working, and I will press record now. There we go. All right. Well, hello everybody, and good morning to all of you. It's always one of these things where I say to myself, it's the early birds that I hate saying the early bird gets the worm. We're not getting the worm here, but the early bird gets the best information. So we changed our time for this Sync Cafe to 10 a.m. today, and I am so excited for our conversation today with our guest, Benji Rogers, who is the co-president of Surreal.ai and also one of the co-founders of Lark 42. And we're going to get into all of that stuff in just a couple of minutes. We'll take your questions as they come up. But first and foremost, Benji, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate this very much.
No, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And sorry for any time movement that had to occur. It's my fault, not Mark's.
Oh,
Wherever you are in people's feeds.
at the end of the day, it all worked out, and that's the most important thing, is that we're here. We're going to have a great conversation, and also I wanted to let you know that Jasper from All That Matters told me hi, told me to convey his hello to you. Just
Excellent.
yeah, and hopefully I'll be doing something from Singapore live as part of the Sync Cafe in about a month, and
Oh,
chat to you.
excellent.
Yeah. Very cool. So, with that said, Benji, I just want to start before we get into what you're doing right now. I just wanted to ask you if you could just tell people, how you got into the place that you're at now in
Mm.
terms of your work, and where does music come into it? Where does technology come into it? The synthesis of the two in the work that you do.
Sure. Well, thanks. Thanks everyone. I didn't really have a choice. My mother, my father, and my stepfather were all managers.
Mm-hmm.
Managed bands, and then my father was played in bands, and then when I was in my teens, I made the disastrous and wonderful move to become a musician myself. I look at everything from the perspective, I guess, first and foremost of a musician, and then second of all, manager. And then in 2009, I was living on an air mattress in my mother's spare room, and success wasn't breeding more success, let's put it that way.
Right.
But I had this idea for basically, wouldn't it be amazing if the super fans who would come to my shows could pre-order my album and then watch it being made? And I parlayed that into raising my first round of funding to create Pledge Music, which was, to quote the Hold Steady, massive highs and crushing lows. As that kind of was my first experience. It was my first time ever opening a Microsoft Excel file,
Mm-hmm.
which was my first budget. But it taught me how to build a startup, which was, in one sense, it was like painting with a different brush. Whereas, to be a musician, you're doing this one sort of creative act, and I think that there's a certain creativity required to build a company that with a product and a company. And so I got the bug for that, and within that also started a label, a publishing company, and began to build other technology. And then when I handed over the reins of Pledge to the second and third CEOs of the company, um, I began to I started another startup in the blockchain space, not the crypto space, but the blockchain space, sort of more around the ledger side and particularly on the right side. That made me wildly unpopular for a while. And then moved into advising CEOs, because a bunch of CEOs have said, wow, you've really seen the wars. You could probably be valuable to me to look around the corners. And
Yeah.
so I've been really lucky. I've only really ever known the music industry. And I've basically, my North Star has been there has to be a better way to pay these amazing humans that make this music that I love so much. And
Mm-hmm.
so my startup kind of thesis has been that like music is one of the most undervalued assets. It underpins most visual media today.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got, my first exposure to AI music was really boomy in about 2016, 17, when Alex had said to me, like, I've made this machine, you push a button and a song comes out, and every sixth one is pretty good. And the second I saw that, I was like, well, this, genies are famous for not wanting to go back into the lamp.
Yes.
So, or the toothpaste doesn't want to go back in the tube, choose your metaphor. Um, and that was when I really saw like, oh, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then my brain immediately went to uh, if this scales, it's gonna put pressure on all of the other music, like the music made by humans. And so I think as we all know on this call, if you're into synchronization, the
Yeah.
music metadata mess has always been the kind of thing that like we always talked about fixing or finding a way. And I felt in 2016 when I was proposing what was dot blockchain that became Verify Media that it needed to be fixed for what's
Yeah.
coming. And it turns out that like had it been better repaired, we would have been way more ready for AI because AI unlocks a whole series of challenges around metadata and around, in particular, for writers and publishers. There's a huge, knotty, gnarly problem that AI unlocks, which I think, again, it's all upside potential if we can license it correctly. But yeah, so the journey has really been I've done almost every job in the music industry with the exception of a distributor, but I have built a distribution platform or been part of the building of one, I should say. So I do know how I know how the sausage gets made, and I can look at it and still eat it at this point. So I guess that's it. A glutton for punishment. Because the rewards are the rewards of helping the musicians and creators are great.
I definitely have common cause for you in that. At the end of the day, it's all for a good cause. So it's worth, spending the time that you have to dealing with the, you know, dealing with the internals of the sausage factory. And
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to jump on before we go into, like, I want to talk about metadata a little bit
Mm,
because obviously that's one of the things that I think is extremely important to us in what we do in sync in particular, but it's very important when it comes to operational AI and generative AI and
sure.
making sure that we're harnessing it properly. But the first thing that came to mind for me is that when you built Pledge Music, what you built was really, in my estimation, like the first enabler on a massive scale of creating fandoms. Like
Mm,
what they would, if you would take a look at what happens in the Korean market with Weverse that Hive
yeah.
has.
Yeah.
You basically created a proto version of what that ended up becoming.
Yeah, it was so thank you. Yes. I think Topspin was a little earlier than we were to really coin the super fandom and
Yeah.
Shamal and Ian really kind of like began to understand through their lens what this was like on the commerce side. The trick that I think that Pledge did that the pledge came up with, which was different from both Topspin, which was really about the commerce and the building of the data side, and let's say a Kickstarter, which was about the funding, was we sat in this middle layer, which was if we give the fans this thing that they can't get anywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
like a almost like the sort of the paid Substack tier that you get when you pay, but sort of that middle layer, because it
Yeah.
was really the conceit that I had back then was this. I'm probably more interesting when I'm making something, when I'm
Yeah.
making music, than when I'm holding a CD or a piece of vinyl and selling it to you. Like, and I remember the reason it really came about was I remember in 2001, in 2000, I think it was, I made my first album. I used to own a home. I was a homeowner, and I was like, you know what I should do? Sell this home and spend all the money making an album and drinking fine wines. And I did both. Both were disastrous moves in the long run financially. A
Well, I
lot of
hope the
fun,
wine was
right? You know,
good.
the
Yeah,
wine was amazing.
right.
It was so good I don't drink anymore. That's how good it was. But no, but the main thing was this was um, when I made my first album and I made my first label and my first publishing company as a musician, 1,000 CDs showed up at my house. And suddenly I was like, wait, I'm a salesman now. I don't know how to do that. I know how to make stuff. I know how to share the things that I'm making. Like, I know how to play live and perform, that kind of thing. But what was really interesting was when you get to this point where you're holding these 1,000 CDs in your apartment or your home, you're like, oh, now I have to, be that commerce engine.
Yep.
And I don't think that comes naturally to a lot of musicians. So
Yeah.
Pledge's conceit was this: why don't you pre-order the album while it's being made? You can unlock access to a feed of video and images and audio, from the studio. And then I don't have to sell it to you because you've already bought it. It
Yep.
lands in your hands and you go, look at that thing I just saw being made. And I think that was the real trick between Topspin, who was the early innovator on the e-commerce side and that super fan coinage. What we did was give them the ability to spend not on the thing itself, but on the anticipation of the thing. It was like a giant, long, slow dopamine reward. Because what happened was you basically so this is what would drive me crazy. So let's say Mark on the call, you post, I'm going in the studio today. And I'd be like, great, there's absolutely nothing I can do about that. Other than
Right.
just like wish you well, have fun. But I'm going in the studio today, and at 3 p.m. I'm going to show you us getting drum sounds. Now that sounds incredibly boring if you've ever sat in a studio for 15 hours while someone hits a snare drum and moves the microphone around. But to those who haven't seen it, it's magical
Yeah.
because what we imagine as being sort of like just the part of our trade is something that if you're doing a job that you don't love, sitting, like staring at a computer all day, when something pops in from the studio that only you are getting, and this was the difference was because what people would do is they would say, I'm in the studio, look, everybody. But in
Yep.
that posting for everybody, it was just advertising, it was marketing. When you just post it for those fans, it's engagement and it's
Right.
powerful because, and so what happened was quite often artists would release unreleased songs on Pledge
Hmm.
that no one had heard before. And people who hadn't bought the album or pre-ordered the album would say, hey, can you post them to YouTube? Can you share them? And these fans would say, no, this is for us. This isn't for everybody else. They were like, but we're pledgers. We are that. And that's when I realized that these fans want to organize. But more critically, they want to support creators.
Yeah.
They feel good doing so. I feel good buying books from authors. It just makes me happy that I'm able to. I love, supporting people on Substack.
Yep.
Yesterday I bought an album on an app called Lume, Lume, by a
Hmm.
band called, what was the band called? Lake South out of New Zealand that I'd never heard before. Amazing. So what I think streaming took away in one sense was the fans' ability to spend in the way that they wanted to. Because the music
Yeah.
industry decided, wouldn't it be great if everyone just streamed? But there were a whole bunch of people who were like, but we want to buy vinyl. We want to buy test pressings. We want to buy lyric sheets. We want to, there's so much more to being a fan than just, hey, it's time to consume my latest stuff brought to you by so and so. And I think that was the thing that really showed me. And I remember at the time we did a study on this, and it was with Nielsen, which doesn't even exist anymore, which is now Luminate. But
Yeah.
we estimated that there was between 500 million and 2.4 billion, I think it was, in untapped revenue from fans wanting to buy stuff that artists were not even putting on sale. And I remember literally like I met a bunch of these fans, we surveyed them, we met them. And I remember one of them saying to me, like, can you tell this artist to add more stuff? Like I want to buy more, but they're keeping it so limited. And then another just share one little anecdote was I remember I got so there's a nightmare call you get from your engineers. There's a couple of them. One of which is the site's down, but that could be good. There's just too much traffic, right? The
Yeah.
second one is we've got a billing problem. That's the worst one you ever hear. And what happened was he said, I think the credit card is charging random people more money than the item costs.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, that's not good.
yeah.
And so we begin to tear through it like 2, 3 in the morning. And then we realized, no, what's actually happening is we'd added a roundup feature. So you could add extra. And people were saying it costs $55, but I want to help make it happen. So I'll pay 70. I'll pay 80.
Right.
And that's when I was like, if we can get enough of these fans to be able to do this, then it's a win. The company didn't work for many, many reasons, but the thing that it really proved to me was if you limit, the fans want to spend, the industry isn't tooled to sell to them. And when it became sort of more commoditized, like even at labels now, they'll say, "Oh, you mean D2C?" And I'm like, "No, I don't mean D2C." Because a consumer and a fan are two different humans. The
Absolutely.
consumer is looking for the cheaper, the easier, the commoditized version, but the fan wants to go further. I remember once the website literally like the we had an issue and the website broke, like the HTML broke. So literally it wasn't rendering properly. And people were still trying to buy things because they wanted to give it to the fan. And so I think as we go into this next sort of wave, what we mustn't forget is there are these weird humans, and I'm one of them, who like I know I could listen to it for free on my Kobas or on my Apple Music. I know I can listen to it as part of my subscription, but I also want to buy it because I want that artist to keep going. And you can't stream enough to keep them going. It's just not possible, right?
Yeah.
No, no, it isn't a thing. And I think um, the penny dropped for me when I was with my son in England a couple of years ago. I remember we were outside, the HMV, his master's voice, the old record store in Bath in England,
Hmm.
and I'm just seeing kids carrying vinyl around, and I'm like, it's totally unnecessary. We don't. This isn't a problem that we have anymore. The only way you can listen to them is on this weird format that you can have lots of treble, lots of bass, not both. Like it's not. You know, but people want it because I think what they're really looking for is connection. They're looking for this thing that, and it's a signal, it's a status signal. Oh, you poor thing, you have to listen to on Spotify. Well, don't worry, because I actually get it on vinyl. So I think and we mustn't, I think that the industry as a whole said, well, now we're streaming, let's do something else. And and they didn't think what's the alternative to that, which could be streaming plus the other things that these people want to do. So yeah, it's a long way of saying that's been my passion for so long, has been basically how do we, the direct line to from the between the artist and the fan is the easiest one to monetize for the artist. And if you're the label, facilitating that relationship and augmenting it and helping it is huge. So that's yeah.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And this reminds me of like, this goes back a few, over a decade. I had a conversation with, it was with Martin Ware. And Martin Ware, for those of you who don't know him, he's the one of the co-founders of the Human League and Heaven 17. And he and I were speaking, and he's like, you know what the problem is about streaming, Mark, is that you don't get the magic of the experience of going and
Mm,
buying the album and connecting with the artist and their work. I
mm,
thought to myself, that is a real insight because
yeah,
people want that no matter what. And I feel like it's come full circle. And Pledge was one of the earliest companies to get that there is this desire that's inherent in human beings that they want to connect with the artist. They want
yeah,
to connect with everything around the artist, not just stream the music, but everything that you talked about, every touch point, whether it's a collectible, whether it's a real interaction in some way, whatever it is. And
totally.
if there's any lesson for everybody here that's an artist or working with artists, is that you know fans, if you're not okay, that sounds bad if you're not monetizing them. Fans, if you're not properly engaging with them on what they want, you're leaving both the relationship and the closeness of the relationship and
Mm.
their loyalty, and of course, money on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me take a question here from Mark, and then we'll switch subjects. Mark, go ahead. It's nice to see you, by the way.
Good to see you, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, how you doing, Benji?
Good,
Uh,
thanks.
so you were talking about I come from the media production side and studio side and being a producer, music for television and media and all
Mm.
that kind of stuff. I'm in Nashville now, and a lot more focused over the past few years on what you were talking about, what you've been talking about, in the way of fan engagement and how artists can go directly to their fans. And I've learned a great deal more about what that looks like in monetizing music. What do you think is um, a great description of uh, a, a perfect scenario of getting a sync license where the artists is taking advantage of the sync and doing the things that they would do to maximize that opportunity to with their fans. um you know, as far as or even somebody like me who is a sync agent for artists sometimes, being able to help them, you know, set that up.
Yeah. Um, well, thanks for the question, Mark. And yeah, so I think I've seen a couple of scenarios around this, which is you know, I'm conflicted. On the one hand, I think that there's these incredible uses of synchronization in for art. I think that what can sometimes happen is the brand can almost be like it's wanting to go, the brand wants to tap into those fans.
Yeah.
And you have to be very careful of, as an artist, which brand you let in, right? And it has to be real and genuine. And so I know when we first started to work with Nashville artists on Pledge, someone would say, "Well, I have this brand partnership, so we can't do X, Y, and Z." My answer was, "Well, why can't we? Does that brand offer something amazing that we could make a new version of for the fans?" I think the key is like it's got to be authentic. I know that some of these artists will be like, I will sell anything.
Hmm.
And I think that that's an incredibly hard business model to keep going. You're seeing this particularly in the influencer culture right now, where they're selling like, well, so a bunch of them, most of them are AIs at this point, which is truly awful. But they're selling like off-brand like supplements. They don't care. The only job is to sell. And so I think authenticity is the key. And then the ideal, I think, would be, listen, I've got this song, it's going to come out in this commercial or this TV show at this time. Can you get a signed script from the commercial that the artist, from the TV show that the artist also signs? It's the tangible things that could happen. Is there a special version of the song cut specifically for this, or a new remaster or something around it that makes it not the same as the one that they can already listen to on streaming? Because I think really, Mark, what it is when you're looking for that fan experience, it's the thing that I get to say. So I look at marketing as a status relationship, and this is Seth Godin really is the master class in this, but it's this. It's everyone else gets the one on Spotify, but I get it on high res because I subscribe to Cobas. Everyone else gets it on Apple Music in Dolby Atmos, but I get it in FLAC in this new version that was only available for this commercial, this use case, this thing. And it's often just it could be a radio edit. It could be some version of the song that is done in a different way. But I think if I were to be that artist, what I would do is this. This is the version that's going to come out in the TV show or commercial. I'm going to record a special acoustic version just for my super fans. And we're going to do a limited edition 200 vinyl on a 10-inch with one on either side, right? Like those are the types of things where you you can maximize it. The brand or the show will love it because it's just literally love for what's happening. And then the fans get to say, everyone else gets the standard version, I get this. I'll share one amazing story. There was a band out of Canada. Their name is escaping me right now, which is terrible, but that's what years of music and true review. So when we did a pledge campaign for them, and they were pretty like a kind of rock band, bald head singer guy, man after my own heart, and uh they had T-shirts made, and on the back it just said "I pledged." And so if you'd pre-ordered the album on it, you would have had this special edition of the t-shirt. So I was in Toronto and I went up to their show to watch it, and round the block were just these black t-shirts that said I pledged. And it was people going to say, look, I was part of this thing that was different. And so I think if we think about the synchronization, sync and brands want to get in, the brand wants to get to the most people. The artist, that's not their job. The artist's job is to get to the right people and to make those right people want to share things, because that gives them status. Everyone who had that shirt was one rung above those that didn't get the shirt. And then they were looking on eBay for that shirt. Everyone who got the edition that didn't go to Spotify, but that was only available in this way, they've got status over everyone else. I will often say, like, oh my God, you have to listen on Spotify. That's such a shame. I have it on Cobas. Like, it's really petty and small in one way. But it's also like, I've got the hardback edition of the book here as opposed to the paperback. We are creatures of status. We always have been. That doesn't change. And a fandom has status over those, which is why direct to fan and direct to consumer are such radically different paths. Because when you go as wide as possible, right? And listen, I'm not on social media. I don't touch social media. It's not my thing. However, the thing that was so interesting was, hey, fam, look at me. This is what I'm doing. No, you're selling. You're broadcasting to the most people to try and get something to happen. And the you get a dopamine hit watching people log in. You get a dopamine hit with all the likes, and that's what that is. But when you and my latest version is I is the Substack I write. My Substack's not for everybody. It's not designed for everybody. It wouldn't need to be. But there are people who want to pay for it. They don't have to, but they want to. And in that, there's a status play as well. So I think, Mark, it's difficult with a brand. You have to be very, very sensitive to that brand need, or whatever that show need is, and it's got to be right. It might not be right for the super fans, in which case you just let it rip and, just this is something I'm doing. But I do love that idea of a special version, a special thing for it that gives it like, this is why, I happen to love this brand of sneakers, or I do eat this chocolate bar, or like I do take this, weird rhino horn pill, whatever it is. But you also have to be careful, because in a world that AI has made, these AI influencers, everyone is selling something. And I think that what the artists need to be very careful of is less selling, more offering, which is you can come and be part of the club, right? It doesn't even have to, it's not about paid, it's about access. It's about being the first in, And I think it's interesting to watch. I know Jeff Tweedy has a big Substack right now. And I was looking at the difference between his numbers on Instagram and his numbers on Substack. The posts on Instagram have a pretty decent reach, but the number of people on his Substack, he's probably making more money from his Substack than he is from streaming music at all. And all he's doing is that which I would have given away for free, I'm offering to my fans first. They get to be a part of the journey. And then they are the ones that say, oh, did you see that thing? Oh, yeah, you're not on the sub. I get it. Yeah, it's yeah. Well, if you're like me, again, it's just that rung. And I'm guilty of it as hell. I love that feeling. I love knowing that on the second disc of the Spinal Tap Criterion collection, there's the entire other movie with the other bits. Like, I love that stuff. This is the deep cut from, this is Marty DeBurgi's hat from Spinal Tap. Like, we're all creatures of status. We want to show our arcane knowledge. Look at metadata. I think that in the last, I'm going to make a bold pronouncement. In the last 10 years, metadata has become sexy.
Yeah.
And again, because we dork out about it. Oh, how are your IPI numbers doing? Oh, not as good as my ISWCs. Like, this kind of strange, weird knowledge, but it gives a status.
Yeah.
Because when someone comes along and doesn't understand it, you go, oh, poor them, they don't get it. And I think we have to remember that those hierarchies can be They're they should be based on respect, and they should be based on legitimate, like, what is good for that fandom, which is why when we go too commercial and we go too far into the influencer world, you can break that trust. I mean, look at the example of like Meta's new glasses, right? That so they hired the influencer to get it to the most people, and now that influencer is pushing pervert glasses, and nothing that can be done to fix that, right? It's like it's impossible because this person's just getting paid to do it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And so that's my thing is with the super fans, you have to be very careful of that line, because what you don't want to do is do the thing that would upset them. And AI is a real interesting one here, because the super fans, the humans, don't like AI. And
Hmm.
so if an artist is going to use it, you have to be very careful of that line, because the oddest thing is nothing has brought people together from the furthest to the right to the furthest of the left in any country than a dislike of AI at this point. So yeah, it's a fascinating one. I hope that answered your question, Mark.
Yes, thank you.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And Mark, I want to add a couple of quick things around exploiting a sync in the right way, engaging in a way that engages your fans. The first thing is, if I was looking at all of the artists that you're working with, I would start off by just asking them, beyond any sync moment, just asking them, what brands do you really like? Like, what brands do you have an affinity to? And then from there, you can get an idea if you want to do the legwork to say, okay, can we cross-reference what this artist likes and what this brand is as a brand and who its market is, and do the fans connect to it? That's something that I think can bring you a lot of value just by building that sort of quick matrices between what the brands are doing, what the brand image is, and what your artists naturally have affinity to, because that can help you in terms of how you pitch things better. The other thing that I would say is that having worked with a lot of brands on different syncs, the frustrating thing for me has been that about 80% of the time, even if we had an artist that had a massive audience, and we have done some where there's a massive audience with the artist, and because of that, there was a noticeable lift in the views of the commercial than there was with the rest of the commercials that were around a particular campaign or brand. And a lot of the time, I found that the agency or the brand doesn't want to do the legwork after the sync actually happens, that they should do. Even though I've said to them, look, you've got 10 million people that watch this, and usually you have 50 to 100,000 people watching. You should be doing something with this.
Mm.
The artist is ready to send out a note, and the artist did send out a note, and that really brought a lot of people to it. But the next step has to be a level of engagement from the brand, and a lot of the time that doesn't happen. And what I can tell you is that when it does happen, and here's where we go back to fandom, is that whenever I do something with Korean music, and it's a band like Blackpink or a band like BTS or similar bands with a major Korean label, they know all about it. They make sure that the fandom knows exactly what show it's going to be in, exactly what commercial, when it's coming out, and then that fandom takes their power and puts it out to everybody. And the other thing, going to what you said, Benji, is that they always ask me, Mark, is there something that you can send us that we can share with just our audience of what's going
Mm.
on from a creative point of view? And that gets them even more hyped up. So
Yeah,
if there's anything that I can say is that when an opportunity comes up to work with a brand, at least have the conversation with them that, look, we're going to, from our side, do everything we can to get our fans engaged in this. Can you work with us in order to help to build the excitement out? That's the thing that I think, when it has happened with us, it's something that's been real and measurable. But it only happens, I think, the right way if there's engagement on both sides.
totally.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to switch subjects now from that. And yeah, let's get into first of all, let's see, we've got 20, 30 minutes left. So let's get into, first of all, why AI, why why metadata has become so sexy in the last decade, because I agree with you. You know, from the just starting off from the sync side, Benji, you know, everything was digitized in the last 10 years in
Yep.
terms of delivery, in terms of discovery, in terms of categorization in the sync business and audiovisual media in general. And that means that people are searching and categorizing based on digital methods, and being able to clear and being able to find music and categorize it really only happens if you have good quality metadata.
Mm.
Otherwise, you're going to suffer for a variety of reasons. Your music's not going to be findable. People aren't going to listen to it. People aren't going to clear it. So, you know, something that has been, I think, always a very boring subject has become sexy because
Mm.
you can see that it drives revenue and engagement on the
Yeah.
one hand. But then on the other hand, you know, from my estimation, whether you're a major label like Universal or you're an individual artist, you suffer on some level from inconsistent or incorrect metadata or non-optimized metadata. So with that preamble, Benji, what can we do, or what is happening now to actually help people to solve this? And where does AI fit into that picture?
Um, so at first, I think AI is kind of rubbing a little salt in the wound. And there's a
Okay.
couple of reasons for it. So I think in the first, there are multiple matching initiatives. And
Mm-hmm.
in one sense, having AI crunch through a whole bunch of lines on a spreadsheet is much, much better than a human doing it, right?
Right.
I remember in 2016, I I made a sort of a prediction, which was that like we're going to go into an era where there's more money to be made over the table than under it.
Yeah.
And if you don't clean metadata, you're, because look, let's face it, a bunch of people won for quite some time if you didn't know. If you could sit on a black box of money that was growing and, sitting
Yeah.
on your balance sheet, you couldn't necessarily use it, but it was there. It was leverageable, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it was also not, there was no incentive to go get it.
Yeah.
And I've been involved in multiple initiatives where, whether it was from like registrations at PROs or optimizing for those, but the interesting thing was in 2016, the proposal I had for this was called dot blockchain. And it
Mm-hmm.
was basically this idea that instead of treating the song as the recording here and then the metadata in a spreadsheet that accompanied it, what if you combined them? What if there was literally built within the song itself an ID? And that ID stemmed from, basically like people corroborating data. Because the
Yeah.
interesting thing is, if I were to take a pic, like, here's the example.
Yeah.
On this, in the five boxes on my screen, I see myself, Mark, Sebastian, Carl, Mark. And if I were to take a screenshot and put it up onto a social network and I tagged us all, right? I'm associating metadata with this image.
Mm-hmm.
And if I tag you, Sebastian, and I tag you, Mark and Carl, I'm making a statement. So I'm building the metadata profile. I'm saying this is the five of us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not true, right? Because, but what it does is if I tag you guys, it gives you a choice. You can say, yes, that's me, corroborate the metadata. No, it's not me, in which case you're invalidating my claim, but we're having a conversation. If you leave it alone, it's truthiness. It's between the two because I've made the claim and I might have a way to do that. So my original proposal was, why can't we create songs like that? Why, song is, a wave file is a 1980s flat format that was created in, when Bill Clinton was president. It's a
Yep.
long time ago, right?
Yeah.
So what if we modernize the media format so that the metadata was contained within it? That way, when you bounce, so Carl, when you bounce something out of your studio, you tag those who are part of it. And you create that scenario where there's truthiness. You're saying, I claim that Sebastian wrote 15% of this. I claim, Mark, you wrote 20% of this. Because now what happens is you can connect with. So the conceit was this: what if you could just basically message the song and the song split the message out? Like every song had its own Slack or Teams or chat channel where you could argue over the metadata, but each argument was an amendment, a healing towards getting to the end result. Because one of the things we did was we went from, CDs to
Yeah.
streaming to Alexas, you name it. But every technology has to go back in time to the 1980s to the flat file, wave file format. So the idea was, can we create a new format that contains within it the metadata?
Yeah.
And basically say to the platforms, don't accept this new media until X amount of the metadata is solved. And then we know where to solve it because the song itself is this little bundle. So at the time, my thought was, well, look, if we all agree to this as a new standard, then instead of downloading a .wav file, you would download a .wbc, .bc file. And what that would do is unlock the current state of the metadata, not the official state, but basically the first piece of metadata that went in, and then each amendment and who made it as it went forward. We actually built it, and we actually distributed some in, so you could literally play the song on one device, listen to it on the other, and it would show you all of the amendments in the metadata that went before it. Like, imagine if you could do that for any song on Earth. That'd be pretty powerful. But it was in no one's interest to kind of heal that metadata together because there was no real big threat, because you could
Yeah.
still make a bunch of money from streaming. And it was, there was no alternative to basically throwing humans at the problem. I'll never forget, my friend at a major label was trying to clear a sync license, right? And he literally says to me, it's taken me 6 months. And I said, well, what's your process? And he says, well, I have a spreadsheet on my computer, and then I call someone, they confirm the information, I write it down in my spreadsheet. I'm like, well, how does the rest of the company see it? They don't. It's just my spreadsheet. So I'm like, so you're fixing the metadata for this one song. You have to use Google to figure out if you own the other piece of it, right? And again, so now I said, so what happens if someone else wants to use the song and they don't get you on the phone? Oh, then someone else will do this whole thing again.
Yep.
Now, it's better than it was, but the incentive has never really been there. And I love that, the Charlie Munger thing: show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. Now along comes AI. And so let's say that you want to do a license to put training data into an AI. The AI companies don't know what an ISRC is, an ISWC is. The AI engines do not understand any of this.
Mhm.
They understand a block of content arrived, I'm going to turn it into numbers. And then I'm going to spit out a new thing that is unrelated to the previous in sonic quality, in I'm basically like distancing it. And
Yeah.
so because we're not ready for that, and because of the oddity of AI, you can't send a CWR file, an ISWC, to an AI company because it's meaningless to them. It has no, it's there's no value, because the way that an AI interacts with the publishing and writer's side is via the sound recording.
Hmm.
So we're in this really interesting situation where, so if you're a songwriter, right, people may be putting your sound recordings into AI systems. The AI is learning how to write songs from you and like you, creating new things that write songs like you. And there's no way to pin the two together, because basically there was no way for them to, like, so if you're the AI company, where would you go to figure out who to pay? How
Yeah.
would you figure, like that's a mess. And it's because we don't have that global decentralized database of music rights that this is again the problem. The way that we've worked on it is to basically help publishers and help writers to codify what their work is to an AI.
Hmm.
And when we do it through attribution, so effectively speaking, when a prompt occurs, you can sit there and say it used 17% of this composition, 15% of this composition, 12% of this, boom, boom, till you get to your 200, and then it used these sound recordings. I mean, literally, it's like a microscopic X-ray machine over the song, showing what was used and what was powerful. And the reason that that's so important when it comes to attribution is because so we predicted last year before our company Surreal was acquired, we predicted that 60% of all media would be partially or completely AI generated
Yeah.
by 2027.
Hmm.
So the current estimate is that 70% of the internet is basically AI bots or AI partial or completely created. Deezer announced this morning 50% of their uploads are now AI.
Yeah.
50. So half of all media is being created from works that songwriters made. And if they're going to get paid for it, then licensing has to be a function of how the works are used. Because if you go by a market share proxy, what could happen is the AI companies might generate their own outputs
Yeah.
and fill the training gap with them. So the market share proxy is not going to work in the long term. We have to figure out a way to license. Opting out of AI is a way to not make money.
Yeah.
Opting in at rules that you set and with options is the way to make money. And so the reason I got involved with Surreal and I started working with them 2 and a bit years ago was I basically said if Tamaya and the team of engineers, these amazing engineers, have built what they say they can, and they really have built it, if you can understand how valuable your IP was to what is being created by these AIs, then you can license in such a way to capture that value. If they are the only ones that understand your value, they will take the value to the top. It's and so one of the things that's been interesting about our journey now that we're with Warner has been, there's this idea that like we don't want the way licensing to be pushed down to us. We want to push
Hmm.
licensing up. We want to say, and so if you think about the early days of YouTube, there was basically one or two, three platforms that were, that needed to be, brought in line.
Hmm.
There's 120 odd AI companies. Imagine trying to license the publishing to all of them, or even managing the rights to these companies. So I think we need to be really careful. And as I've said before, the leverage point is this. Today, these platforms cannot do what they do without the original things that humans create. They can't do it. Because if you feed too much synthetic data in, you get what's called model collapse. The models just don't
Yeah.
work anymore. But so the reason it's important to have the metadata in line, this is my long ADHD way of getting to your question, is you have to rapidly be able to license the compositions into these AI platforms at rules that are acceptable to you, which is basically a variable payout based on platform fees and usage of the new things that are created. But if your works are not clearable, as in licensable, because you haven't got the agreement of one of the writers, or the same complication that everyone's felt trying to get the synchronization filled. Imagine that, but at scale. If you're an AI company, you're going to say, "Well, I'm just not going to use it. It's too much." Or look, we licensed the karaoke catalog, so we already have those compositions. Don't need to do it in any other way. And
Yeah.
all the writers go, well, wait a minute, that's not the use case, but doesn't, again, it's ethically trained. So, um, so I believe fundamentally this, no matter what the outcome, AI is not going to be squeezed back in to the toothpaste
Of
won't go back
course.
into the tube. So we can either get our act together and license so that we capture the value that AI creates, or we can let the AI companies dictate how we will be paid, in which case, because they control the prompt window, they control the output, and they know what's in there, they are asymmetrically able to see what we can't. And so the biggest thing that we've been pushing for is this with our publisher clients and our label clients and our artist clients and our distributor clients, is to say, you can opt out for now. That's fine. You can opt out saying, I don't want these use cases, all of those things, but you have to do something. If you do nothing, then what you're doing is you're allowing them more cycles to perfect not needing the originals to make these new things. And it's a timing issue because the holy grail for an AI company is if I needed 10 million things to train on, I can do it with 2 million.
Yeah.
And then I can do it with 1 million that I create myself.
Hmm.
And then I can legitimately say, Mark and Carl, I did not use any of your work to generate this new thing. And then all that value that is created on the web cannot flow back to the creators, which is why we need our data to be impeccable. We need to push our PROs, our labels, our publishers, anyone who will listen to say we want to license with attribution first.
100%. I mean, look, coming from where I come from, metadata has always been a passion of mine. Everybody who knows me knows this. And I think there's like two things, and I don't want to dwell on this first subject too much, but
Mm,
I'm going back to the beginning. And Carl, I will get you. I see your hand, but let me talk first. Okay, so the first thing is when it comes to metadata, one of the things that's always been one of very frustrating to me, and I know that you tried to do this,
mm.
is that we have not updated the ID3 tagging of MP3s since the Clinton administration.
Yep.
And it was built for CDs. It doesn't work for sync. It doesn't work for AI. It doesn't even work for streaming. And we can't get the industry around that. So that's a point of frustration that hopefully I'm hoping now maybe what you were trying to do is before the time where there was urgency. Now I feel
Yeah.
like we may be at a point where there's urgency in an economic sense to actually do something about reforming where we sit right
Mm.
now with the with the ID3 container and make it work for today's market.
Totally.
That's one thing. So the second thing is when we look at remuneration for training these AI systems, and honestly, we harp on generative AI a lot, but it's also operational AI. Operational
Mm.
AI is being trained on a lot of the same materials. So, when I look at this, what I've thought to myself, when I look at what Surreal is doing, I think, okay, so this is sort of the genesis of what's going to be a future payout system where finally at some point, maybe it'll take 3 or 5 years, but there's going to be some kind of a schemata where the PROs are going to get behind this and use this as a basis to say, okay, so we've worked out what the royalty schedule is going to be based on these factors that Surreal has built from the information it's gleaned from these different systems. And
Yeah.
then we will pay people out on a royalty schedule the same way we do for streaming or the same way that we do for sync. Is that a fair assumption? Is that a fair way to
It
view?
is. It is, and it's even a little better than that
Hmm.
because it unlocks so the AI. I know I'm conscious, Carl. We'll get to your question in a second, but
Yeah.
just to show that point is this. So if you think about it, the way that a license would traditionally work is I give you the thing, you go make money with the thing, and you pay me my bit. But the
Right.
thing that's interesting is, let's say, Carl, you write in an incredibly peculiar way. And the AI, and one of the AI companies suddenly gets, it goes, oh, wow, every time I use Carl's composition here, it gives me an output that I keep getting rewarded for. So what it does, it hardens that pathway. And so it's not just that it used it, it's that that hardened pathway, that way, that thing that you do that's so uniquely you, begins to teach the AI how to get, it gives it capabilities it didn't have.
Hmm.
So what that effectively means is it's like a sink that continuously runs forever,
Yeah.
always paying you. Because if the platform pays you a piece of their fees every time, like forget like just being paid for the training itself, like ignore that. But let's just think about it. Let's say I pay the platform $10 a month, and 15% of my prompts touch Carl's work because Carl is one of these like key pieces. And again, we don't know what the AIs will use because they are really, really unpredictable. They are literally
Yeah.
prediction, engines, right? But this happens. And so what we see internally is, depending on the number of compositions, when someone says, make me a song, it needs to understand not just what a song is, because it does that from the millions of things it's seen, but it's what does the human want to hear? What does the
Yeah.
prompt do? And so imagine this, that Carl's composition is in one of those hardened kind of nodes that gets used a lot because it was licensed early, and the AI improves and improves, and it goes, every time I do this, it gets better and better. Now you get a piece every time the user pays their monthly fee, but also the things that the user creates become things that you can be part of the revenue stream forever. Each one of those is because everything comes from something else with an AI. Everything is a derivative in some way, shape, or form from an original, because the AI doesn't generate anything new or novel. It is only taking from what was in a reconstructed way. And so the way I view this is, if you open up your social media feed and you see a custom AI video that is indistinguishable from a real human, and the soundtrack used Carl's composition, Carl can get paid. We know how to do that. A PRO knows how to do that. A publisher knows how to do that. A label
Yeah.
knows how to do that. And if it's the sound recording or the publishing, either way, the key, the reason I got so excited about Surreal was Surreal could distill the difference between the composition and the recording.
Yeah.
So what that meant was, but again, the caveat is this: to deliver Carl's composition to an AI, we have to deliver it as an audio file. And that's where the publishing and the PROs are kind of going to have to figure this out, because you have to have the license to be able to deliver that audio file, right? If you're the
Yeah.
PRO or publisher. And so again, all of these things need to be sorted out, because ideally speaking, what the AI needs is a giant list of every song and all the metadata so that it can do that training process at scale. Remember, 70% of the internet is already there.
Yeah.
So if you are a small part of 1% of that, that's a big deal. And
Yeah.
that's what we're saying is like, so Carl, anyway, let's answer Carl's question,
Let's
because
get Carl's
yeah.
question. Carl, you've been waiting patiently, so go for it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Thank you very much. So I hear what you're saying, and I think it's on the right track, but I think that it may create a very problematic precedent, because in essence, if you look at AI from a technical perspective, it is modeled to work like your brain, correct? It's not code. And in fact, in code, they used to say it's open source. Now they don't say open source anymore for AI. They say open weights. Why? Because it gives you the arrangement of the synapses of the virtual brain it creates. And let me give you an example. I was watching some videos with this bassist by the name of Charles. Charles, he's got sort of like a French name, is redheaded, uh, young guy, just a genius, right? And he was talking about how he creates his compositions and what he does. And he was talking about, well, I have a little bit of influence from Jaco Pastorius, and I have some influence from Victor Wooten and this guy and the other guy. So we as humans also absorb all these pieces of audio, all these techniques, all these ways to put together music, just like AI would, right? And so if I create a completely original composition, I call it completely original because it came from my imagination, but I also have my influences, right? I might have Beethoven, I might have, artists that are living artists today that can collect royalties. So that would imply that if we give AI that kind of rights profile, so that any influence that AI took from other musicians those musicians get credit. What about an individual? Say I create a piece of music, but I've been influenced by existing musicians.
Yeah.
Then should the person's creation also give rights to distribute rights to the people that have influenced me? And I
Yeah.
think that's what creates a problematic conflict with
It
doing this with AI.
it does, Carl, but it's slightly different. And I'll tell you why. It's so we have an existing precedent for this. If a Sam Smith song touches too close to a Tom Petty song, we understand how to resolve it, right? We understand because you're right. You know, Pharrell and Robin might be sitting in the Robin Thicke might be sitting in the studio feeling a Marvin Gaye vibe, or they might just be like, "Oops, I done it." One of my songs is literally like a Motley Crue bass line. I'm like, this sounds really. I love this. Sounds great, but it's like that.
Yep.
So now, had it been commercially viable, maybe we would have said, you know what, we should give something to Motley Crue because this is the right thing. Here's the critical difference, Carl, is this. Currently, the AI companies are worth what, $6-7 trillion. And every single thing that they created came from the specific thing that a human made. Not the influence of, not the thing. They took what you composed, turned it into numbers, and used some of those numbers to create something else that may or may not directly compete with you. And so here's the thing. So there's an interesting thing. So Anthropic, I think it was, or one of the big AI companies did a test. What they did was they showed an AI 1 million pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge. And so they said, make me a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. And it goes to all these composites of the picture and it creates a beautiful, flawless, you couldn't tell it's not the real thing, Golden Gate Bridge. Because the training data showed these are the different versions of what that works like. If you delete the Golden Gate Bridge, all the images from the training data, if you remove it and say, make me the Golden Gate Bridge, it can't do it. In the same way, if you say to an AI, and this is an example that Tamai, the CEO of Surreal, uses a lot, says, if I say, make me a picture of a woman with a watch on her left hand and have the watch say 3:21 a.m., it won't be able to do it because it's never seen that. So it's only as good as the thing. Whereas a human, you and I could put together, even if we're not very good artists, we could draw someone, we could draw a watch, we could put 3:21, no problem, because we can do a thing that it can't, because we don't require just the training data. We have a construction layer that these AIs don't. So
Yeah.
when you look at attribution, right, Carl, this is how it works. If I prompt, make me a song about the Golden Gate Bridge, it's going to take an image that Mark might have shot of the Golden Gate Bridge. Like it knows what that is, but it's also going to take a song. And that song is going to have people who composed it. So when we look at it, if you look at think of it as like a layer of low attribution at the bottom and high at the top, right? Low, probably 1,000 different songs. Pieces of these songs were used. But about 5 or 10, depending, are used a lot. They're that hardened note I was mentioning, which means that one of those compositions is a critical path to creating the output that gives the user what they wanted. In particular, if you're talking about like generative AI and derivative outputs, it actually learns from the specific thing. So we call that influence.
Yeah, but I think there's a misconception there, Benji.
Mm.
And I think the misconception is that AI takes pieces of what it heard and puts these things together. And that's not how AI works. AI actually has an understanding of things. We don't really even ourselves as humans understand how it works because we don't understand how our brain works. And we modeled AI to work like a brain. So I bet you, please do the experiment. If you go and tell it to give you a picture of a certain woman, like you said, with a watch at 3:21 p.m., that it will succeed. especially with the newer models that are really getting very good.
Well, no, once again, they're getting better at it, but they're getting better at it because we're showing them more of the use cases, because every training run makes it smarter, because all of the training data is making it better and better at what it's doing.
Yeah, but
So,
it
so
also has an understanding,
no, no,
like
well,
we do, of what it hears and what it
it's a
reads.
different way of thinking of it. I see where you're going. The difference is it's just slightly different. What we see. So remember, what Surreal's built is a piece of code that lives inside the model. We can actually see what those nodes are doing, what is being activated. So we can literally see
Oh,
the brain work doing what it does.
no,
I'm,
that's the
I'm
thing. They will tell you they don't know how the data came together. They cannot at this point
I
characterize
no, no, but Carl,
how
I
that
understand.
happens.
I understand. That's literally what I've been doing for 2 years. The patents
Yeah,
that we
that's the
have
key to know. Yeah.
are how this works. We can see how it does what it does and why.
Okay.
No, no, let me say, we can see what it does. Why is a more challenging issue? And so again, what we can show is when someone says, make me a song, it activates thousands of different things that were in the training data, but it chooses specific ones for specific reasons because it generates the output that's wanted. We can't see the reasoning for it, but we can see what it does. And so this is the reason it's so important is it's not just using a piece of a composition, it's actually learning how to compose from that composition. Now, we often learn the same way as humans. The difference is that we don't have a filter within us. We don't have an X-ray machine that says, when you think this. Now, when we look at neural imaging of the brain, we can actually see it now. So a brain can reconstruct a song from brain waves, which is a very similar thing. So what I'm saying is like the technology that Surreal has created is the thing. The AI companies, Carl, have been telling everyone who will listen for 2, 3 years that it's not possible. They have said that no, you can't look in. We don't know why it does what it does. It's untrue because we literally have a system that's showing it. So Impel and IPMF are literally, we're showing them how we do this. So it's a question of like, we couldn't understand how we don't understand necessarily why it does it, but we can see what it does. And then we can begin to understand what that means. But ultimately, we can only do that if we're allowed to view the model itself. And we've trained it on the musicality elements. We've also trained it on the specifics of like what was used. But it's really important that we keep in mind that it is in the AI company's interests to convince all of us it can't be done. The AI
Of
companies are
course.
literally arguing, no, it doesn't work that way. It's like a human brain and influences. And the difference, I've had this argument with managers, with everybody. It's just, it's a science experiment. You run the test. If the test works, then you say it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So when multiple AI companies have said to us, oh yeah, attribution sounds amazing, and then they don't call us back.
Yep.
And then they go on podcasts and TV saying, yeah, attribution's impossible. It can't be done. It's too complicated. It's enough like a brain to fool us, but it's not enough like a brain because it's in the end, it's a machine. And, having seen this thing work, like I'll give you one example. We were running a pilot and we kept coming up with like one composition. So one composer seemed to like 4 or 5 composers seemed to be composing very similar stuff,
Right.
right? Like, how could this be? Right. And this is literally all we're looking at is what the training data was and then what the prompt was and what the output was. And we're like, we must have a problem. No, it was one writer, multiple pseudonyms. We all, an AI is an exquisitely powerful tool for figuring out these weird, unique nuances. And we're just the way that shows you how to read it as it is expressed in the output. And that means that we can put guardrails in. So it can say, listen, Carl, you might say, you can use my compositions, but not for this use case because I have a brand deal, right? So we can literally write into code if the prompt or the output touches too close to those things expressed, cease generation or have it use something else that can produce that output. And it happens at the speed of AI. So I promise you, I do understand your argument, Carl, and I'm sympathetic to it, but that's AI companies have been telling me the same thing for years. And I keep saying, let me show you how it's done. And most of them would say, that blows my fair use argument out of the water if it's true. And so
Yeah.
I'm a person who's just like, show me the evidence, like because ultimately you run this software, it works or it doesn't.
No, I thank you for that.
Of
I'm
course.
just concerned that, we as humans also do some of the same things we take from other composers and what
Yeah.
we hear, and so how that could create a nightmare for this business.
I think the worst nightmare um is AI companies no longer requiring the human inputs. And so basically generating things that substitute us. Because a brand might say, I want that unique thing Carl does, but Carl costs money and takes time. But I already pay $5 a month for this app that will spit me out 57 different things
Right.
and we'll make 57 custom versions for it. And I don't have to pay Carl.
Yeah.
Whereas if they entered, make me a song that sounds like Carl, that's name, image, likeness, voice attribution 1. So it understands it's trying to create something in Carl's vibe, but it might use some of Mark's data or some of Sebastian's data to train. So just because your name was mentioned doesn't mean that you should get the full credit, right? It would be a bit like saying, make me a song that sounds like Taylor Swift and not paying her writers. Make me a song that sounds like Bruno Mars, but not paying the writers, right? Does the person that performed deserve all of it? Because remember, it's generating a new thing that could be used in an ad just as easily as the originals were. But you might want to say a different word or be in a different genre. And so I think that like
Happening. Yep.
attribution is really about this kind of hybrid of what is the prompt asking for, what is the output being used for, and I would just argue this, Carl, like if 55 million syncs were taking place on all the social media platforms next year, and each one of them owed you a little bit because of the human work that you've done, that's pretty good. If you're not registered and you're in the training data but you don't know it, or the AI company hasn't licensed you, it's still going to make those things. I don't know how, I mean, and this is a sync question for you guys, but like, I think that in the end, the tools are so, I'm working on an app and we have these moments sometimes where it's like, we got to wait for the designer
Mm-hmm.
because he's a human and we should,
Yeah.
and like when I was doing my newsletter, Mark, I used an AI generated image for the start, but I wanted to replace it, but Mark was busy. So I had to wait till Mark was free and then hire him to make me the logo that I can use for my newsletter. Now, the commercial pressure on me is zero. The commercial pressure on us for the app is maybe a little less. This is a separate thing from Surreal.
Sure.
However, I can't tell you the number of times that someone from the team is like, I did this, I worked at this thing in Claude, it's pretty good. No, we're going to use the human on this one. But that's a luxury, right? It's a luxury that can be afforded. And listen, if you're Christopher Nolan or if you're one of these amazing people, you might be able to like push it through. But in the end, what you're saying is, I want to pay $100,000 for this thing that I can generate a substitute for under a cent for something I'm already paying for that is literally built into my calendar.
And
Right?
often the briefs have that I want it to sound like this, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to
so,
wind up this conversation, guys, because it's going.
Yeah.
Sure, sorry.
I hate to do that, Carl, but
No, it's all good. Yeah,
that's
all good.
this is really good stuff, by the way. And I mean, I think the main takeaway here is that at the end of the day, what the AI networks are telling you about not being able to attribute the amount of the percentage and the types of training material that their systems are using is bunk. It just is.
Mm,
You know, I can tell you this as somebody who's been in technology for a while. You know, just in general, if there's input, there's output. There's a way to see it. You know, it's not you know putting it into somebody's brain. It's a little bit different than that. And I think that you know, just building on that basic premise that I've given you, what Surreal is doing is giving us a way that we can then take that and give you a remuneration model, because we have to do
mm,
that for all the reasons that you said, Benji. I mean, we are in a world right now where, you know, I don't want to start talking too much about where things are going in sync, but there is a layer of sync, which is going to be just AI in the next 2 years. And then there's going to be a layer
absolutely.
that's independent music, and then there's famous music, which is kind of going to stay where it's at, you know. And
Mm,
if we're not, if we don't have a system that allows us to remunerate the musicians who train the generative AI systems and the operational, you know, we're going to be screwed. But I think the good news is that that is not the case. So it's just
mm,
about getting people getting people around this model so that they can adopt it. I mean, I think that that's probably for me the biggest difficulty that Surreal and that people in the industry in general are going to have, is bringing these AI companies, the generative AI companies, in line with what we
mm.
need them to do.
Yeah. It's and luckily right now we still have the point of leverage, you know, to your
Yep.
point, which is that like they still need these original things to make the AIs good. And it also turns out that like people, the use cases people want tend to be around name, image, likeness, and voice. So that's good too. But you know, I've had to learn an immense amount of humility around technology. You have to assume that it's going to get better at what it does nonstop. I mean,
Mhm.
it is improving already. I mean, and Carl, you made the point earlier, like it might not be able to do the watch thing now, but it will be able to. I don't doubt you. But that's not a function of it getting smarter. It's a function of it seeing more things and understanding how to put those together to make the thing that's wanted. It's because the scale that these things are running at the frontier. But then the interesting part too, and this is again just like we have to think this through as well, which is that's the current state of the art is massive data centers. But you've got things like small language models which are emerging, which will run on your phone.
Yep.
And they are 80% of what you need from the big frontier model, but already built in. You've got open weight and open source models coming from other countries that are 95% as good at 5% of the price.
Yeah.
In the end, that's what it comes down to is we've created an intelligence layer. And in the tools, Mark, I think this is really critical because ultimately, again, if your lyrics were in the composition are helping to compose papers for college students who were paying $15 a month to OpenAI, I still think you should get paid for that
100%.
because
Yeah.
because yeah, you know, I mean, listen, we'd all love to create a company that didn't have to pay, that didn't have any, you know, cost of goods, but that's, you know, we need to make sure that we're a part of that, proportional to our contribution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to wind things up now. I wanted to ask you to do four things for me. The first thing is, what are the three main takeaways just that people should take with them to know how to, you know, navigate
Mm.
what we're dealing with as either artists or rights holders when it comes to AI from your perspective?
I think the first one is the first one, as I said, have humility in like in understanding that we're dealing with awesome powers here and never be afraid to ask the questions about them. Never like if someone from Silicon Valley is telling you this is how it works, question it
Yep.
endlessly and have humility that you might be wrong. As I said, Carl, you might prove me wrong in the future. I don't know. But what I know right now is what I've seen. The second thing is if you do hear this doesn't work from any AI company or any executive, ask them how many of the attribution platforms they've tested. Ask them. Say, show me the test you did that proved it doesn't work. That's the number one. Seriously, if your PRO says, "Oh, we're not doing it because," why? Show me the test you ran. Show me that you've looked into this. And then the last is, if your PRO or your label, your publisher won't do it, won't sign up for attribution with any of these companies, do it yourself. Go to the website, say sign up, and just start to upload your music, because you can upload it and opt out or opt in to options that come in later on, whatever you choose. But to not take the action is how the AI companies win.
Yep.
I don't think we need to be adversarial to them, but we do need to understand that they are going to court all over the world saying we should not have to pay for any of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's their position, their starting position. All we're saying is you should just pay us a bit based on how much it's used. If you use other stuff, that's fine. Don't pay us for that. But when we are used, we should get credit for that. And that's how we can be part of that better future. So those are the three things I think, which is have humility, ask questions. If someone tells you it can't be done, ask them to show you what tests they've performed and who with. And then the last is, if your PRO, your manager, your label publisher won't do it for you, do it yourself and register yourself. We have artists signing up all the time. We have millions and millions of songs opted in, opted out, in protection, in licensing and not licensing. And hundreds of thousands of artists have already done this. And what we're saying is like, go do it. Because because then we get to go to the AI companies and say, listen, if you want all this amazing training data, it's all right here. These people are ready to do licenses. Go, 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 go.
So this is the URL for you to go to. So go to Surreal, and you can check that. You can check that all out there. And the last question I have for you is just kind of a weird question. I decided I'm going to start asking. What is a question that I should ask the next guest that I have on, just off the top of your head? What would you like me to ask? Because it'll probably be either somebody who's more sync focused or somebody who's tech focused.
I think if it's tech or sync focused, I think you should ask them how much. Well, so here's where I think it is, right?
Okay.
People enjoy using AI because it gives you a dopamine reward when you push the button.
Mm-hmm.
When you're waiting for the answer, you get the same reward as you do when you pull down your social media feed. If you're on Suno or Udio, one of the generation platforms, and you say, make me this, you get a little fix, a hit while it's generating. So if a guest says, oh, I would never use AI, ask them what AIs they actually use. Because I think it's important to ask people, what is their workflow?
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll find is a lot of people are embarrassed about using it, but do. And if the, and I'm very strict. I don't use any digital technology basically past about 7 p.m., 6 p.m. at night until 10 a.m. the next morning. I'm literally offline, and I do a huge amount of thinking on pen and paper.
Mm-hmm.
Because what can happen is AIs are addictive. They're very, very, they're really fun to use. They're great. And that's why we're seeing such scale. We trust them. We want them to be our best friend. We want them to be all these different things. So I would ask your next guest, what's your personal use? How do you use these things? And if you don't, how can you speak to them objectively? Because it's one of those things, you have to know how they work. And then, so I try and live, let's say, 30% of my day in that world and then the rest of it out, because I want to understand it, but I also know I can't objectively look at it if I'm not like the cognitive effort of dragging a pen across a piece of paper is something that ingrains things into us in a way that just typing doesn't. Or doing it. And then, so that's what I would ask is, what's your honest use of AI? And yeah, that'd be a good one, I think. And then I would also ask them to recommend a book that they should read that no one else is reading, or that are just like, that's always a good one.
Okay, so let me ask you, what book should people be reading right now? I'm asking for my
Uh,
own edification as much as anyone else.
so this one right now, The Age of Addiction
Ah,
by David T. Courtwright. It's a history of how substances and then also technologies get to us. So it's really good. It's a really good book. It's also quite fun and like hilarious. Like you got all like, you know, looking at the ways that companies for years have tried to get us to use their products. But what I like about it is he's very precise about how, if you've seen the way that the cigarette companies worked, you've seen the way that the AI companies work. If you've seen the way that, you know, the alcohol companies work, you've seen the way that technology, you know, that social media companies work. And if you think about that variable reward I just mentioned, AI is part of that, right? AI is a part of that dopamine or limbic economy, if you want to call it that, right? Limbic capitalism, because I think that what we often confuse is people enjoying the process of generating with AI, but not really caring about the output so much. And then some people just using it for work. I mean, I use it for work a lot. Like I'm a heavy user of AI, but then I'm also a heavy analog user as well. Yeah, so that's what I would go for. And then yeah, David Courtwright, The Age of Addiction is very, very good.
great. I'm gonna buy that today. So
Excellent.
thank you for the recommendation. This was fantastic, Benji. And Carl, I've spent an hour and a half of giving you guys my time for free. So we're not gonna have a 3 hour conversation. And Benji has to go live his life. I'm sorry. I don't want to be blunt, but you know, this is like a lot of my time, and
No worries.
I
I
gotta
just
go,
thought,
man.
a demo would be great, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, no, yeah. We can arrange another time for that. Sure.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
get in
Thanks.
touch. Get in touch with Benji, and then you guys can talk offline about that. I don't want to sound rude, but I got people who are asking
No
me,
worries.
when are you
Yeah,
It's
coming
only
into
and
my
and
next meeting?
all right. I'll catch you guys soon. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thanks a
Thanks,
lot,
Mark.
Benji.
See you
And
guys.
everybody here, if you want to join me and Benji again on LA or online, there's our Sync Symposium on September 16th. I can't believe it's coming up so soon. Love to see you there. If you want to join us on Monday, our next cafe is on Monday. Feel free to join us. It'll be at its regular time at 1 p.m. Feel free to contribute if you want to reward our time. And now we're going to go. Thank you.